Welcome, everyone, to today's Did You Know series. I'm Sarah Johns, the Public Information Officer for the Washoe County Sheriff's Office, filling in today for Sheriff Balaam. Now, do you ever wonder who the voice is behind that emergency 911 call that you make? I'm excited for today's show because today we are going to highlight the great work by our WCSO Communications Unit. These folks are the people on the other side of the line, helping to keep us safe 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Don't forget to type in your questions, and hit that notifications button so that you can keep up with the Washoe County Sheriff's Office throughout the coming days. With me today is Chief Deputy Tim O'Connor and Supervising Communications Specialist JD Nelson. Now, Chief Deputy O'Connor, you currently have operational command of the Administration Bureau. That includes a lot. So I'm just going to run through them: the Community Engagement Office, Records, Civil Process, the Backgrounds Unit, Training, Research and Development, Dispatch, the Academy, and the Forensic Science Division, the Crime Lab. So you are in charge of all of that.
That's correct.
That's
It's
quite a
little bit.
lot. Quite a lot to handle. Now, this is coming full circle for you because you now are in charge of dispatch, but many moons ago you supervised the unit when it was located in Incline. Explain the process of getting it back here to down in the valley.
Well, I oversaw the dispatch unit for a brief period of time when a counterpart of mine had to go on an extended trip, so I covered for a couple of months while he was gone. At that time, dispatch was comprised of, on a shift, two dispatchers. One handled fire and one handled law, and they only dispatched for the Incline area. They did North Lake Tahoe Fire, and they dispatched any Washoe County Sheriff's Office that were up in the Lake Tahoe area, and that was it. Um, as things evolved, there was a desire to grow this dispatch unit and take over our own calls. Before we had that shared with another agency with dispatch for our deputies in the Reno proper area, the Valley, main Washoe County Valley. So there was a concerted effort. Could we do it? Could we staff it? And when we felt that we had some staffing levels that could accommodate it, we, in essence, moved everybody, our whole operation, off the hill, as it was called, Incline, and moved them down here where we are today in the communication center that we share with the Reno Police Department dispatchers.
And this communications center is legit. Like, this is large. We've got a lot of monitors just for one dispatcher or communications specialist. You know, this was a heavy lift.
It absolutely was, and it wasn't without a lot of growing pains. Expectations, whether it was technology or staffing, that of which we thought we could do. We might have bit off maybe a little bit more than we thought we could chew at first, but we were able to persevere, stay with it. We got the technology that we needed, the staffing that we needed, and we've grown it to what we have today, where we're doing call taking and dispatching. Where an Incline, they did it all with two people. Here, it ranges throughout the 24-hour period, but we could have up to 10 employees working on our shift at any given time.
Wow. And JD, again, you are a communications specialist here at the Communications Center. Explain to us how many dispatchers there are, how many calls for service you can field at any given time.
We've got 25 currently on staff right now. It fluctuates. The training process is pretty rigorous. It's lengthy, anywhere between a full calendar year, sometimes a little bit less, sometimes a little bit more. With all the technology, there's a whole lot of skill sets that you've got to learn that most people don't naturally or inherently interact with. It's a very specific environment. So it takes a while. So 25 currently on staff. Yeah, anywhere between 4 and 10 on any given shift. It's going to fluctuate depending on the time of day, the day of the week, any special events, holidays, inclement weather, fire season. It kind of goes up and down. We work anywhere between 8, 10, 12, 16-hour days sometimes as the work demands.
Right. What does it take to be a communications specialist?
A lot of commitment. Multitasking is absolutely crucial to every single thing that you do in the center every single day. It's a completely reactionary position, right? We don't have the opportunity to go engage in proactive policing, right? We don't have the means or the scope to go park a patrol vehicle and chat with citizens in any neighborhood, right? It's people call us on sometimes the worst day of their life. So it's not necessarily we're paid to be busy, but we are extremely efficient when we do get busy.
And it takes someone with a certain fortitude too to be able to handle the type of calls that you are getting on a routine basis.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. It's discouraging in a lot of ways, largely because we don't get to see the end results in a lot of calls for service, right? You get the initial, the big problems, the big trauma, the big emergency. You carry it through and you kind of delegate to the resources as needed, and then you hang up and you help the next one. There's a lot of missing sort of closure that we don't necessarily nobody's able to capture. It's just the nature of going and going and going on to the next one and on to the next one.
And nobody being able to capture it and accurately capture it. What do you think when you see these Hollywood television shows or what have you that maybe try to model a dispatch center?
I think that most people in the center right now would express their frustration at the false impression of technology and what we're reasonably able to do. Right? Nobody can, we can't control a satellite and, zoom in on a vehicle license plate that just sideswiped you in a parking lot. Hollywood and TV have kind of done us a pretty significant disservice there. There is a huge amount of technology that we do have immediate and constant access to in fire, in medical dispatching, in police, obviously maintaining status of our units. It's come a really long way. But yeah, TV, Grey's Anatomy, the 911 show that they've got now, it's focuses on a lot of the hardcore stuff. We just can't do that quite yet.
Well, let's get a realistic look. We've got a video here, and we are going to show you a day in the life of a communications specialist.
911, what's the address of the emergency? Okay, tell me exactly what happened. I'm Nina Steele. I've been with Washoe County for 10 years now. I am a communications specialist in dispatch. When you call 911, we receive the call here. As soon as a 911 comes in, this screen will pop up. We get your location. We ask you, tell me exactly what happened so we can get the type of call that it is. We get the priority. We prioritize by whether it's occurring right now or is past tense, or if parties are separated. We'll get your name, and we also verify your phone number, so if we get disconnected, we can recontact you to get further information. First person that the public will speak to when calling is going to be the call taker. The call taker enters the information. As soon as we have a brief synopsis of what's happening, we'll hit enter. Once we hit enter, it goes to the police pending calls, and that is immediately seen by the dispatcher, who will click on the call, look at the notes, and send units to help. So we also have our map, which will show us where our units are, so then we can pick the appropriate unit to get there the fastest. We have our available units, so when we see who's available and who can go to the call. You can help us help you by answering the questions in the order that we're giving them to you. I know you have a lot of information and you're probably flustered and you want to get us as much information as you can, but we have a specific order to get that information and make sure we get everything we need for the deputies responding.
And I'll give them the address first, okay?
We are here to help you, and we're going to help you in the best way that we know how. We'll make every attempt to calm you down, but know that we are sending help, and us asking you the questions isn't delaying response in any way. As soon as we hit this enter button, the dispatcher already has the call and is sending help.
So again, JD, let's talk about some of the really cool technology that you do have here. I find it fascinating. I didn't even know that you can set up dispatch off-site.
If we have to, it's obviously a pretty significant production. So for a couple different circumstances or reasons, right, when we have our larger scale events and we need to set up a sort of mobile command, a mini dispatch center, we do have the capability, the technology through Intrado through Power 911. It's the culmination of all of our systems sort of combined, right? A radio, a phone, and our CAD, which is computer aided dispatch. That's how we move every bit of information that we get. We can do it old school by hand, worst case scenario. CAD has streamlined absolutely everything about what we do. So yeah, we can set it up. It's not something typically that we would look at doing, for fun on a Wednesday when calls are slow. But if it came down to it, right, if the center for whatever reason became compromised due to weather and natural disaster for a special event need, we absolutely can pack up and technically do this from anywhere.
Well, and what I think is so cool is that you have a person who's actually taking the call from somebody calling in an emergency. And then at times there's another person who's relaying that information to our first responders.
That's ideal, yeah. We try to keep it a little bit separate whenever possible. It's a little bit cumbersome to try to handle a radio, all of your traffic that you're receiving from your field units, on top of taking an emergency call. You've got to triage what information you absolutely need to get from whom first. It gets a little bit dicey. We try to section it out between our dedicated call takers, right? Somebody who is strictly answering the phone for non-emergency and emergency phone calls. They're going to gather all the pertinent information that they need to in the order that they need to, enter it into CAD. That's going to move over to our actual radio dispatcher. That's who will take every bit of what our call taker was able to capture and broadcast it out over the air.
And when somebody is calling in, you have a platform for 911 calls in Trado. Can you go into that?
Sure. It all goes through the same phone system, depending on what line you're dialing, right? You call non-emergency, you're trying to reach the front desk during some off hours and somebody isn't there. It's going to ring at a different volume than an emergency phone call does. So our call takers automatically are a little bit better cued in on what they're about to pick up the phone to potentially jump into. Every call is triaged. It gets assigned to each individual call taker or operator as needed. We're obviously here 24 hours a day, every day, forever. It's never a bad time to call 911, obviously. Somebody will always be here to grab a call.
And what I find so interesting, not many people in our region know that texting 911 is an option if you cannot call.
Correct.
And explain the text to 911 system and when someone should use it.
If you feel like you are in a position where you cannot safely make voice contact, if that be a domestic, a home invasion, any other situation where you don't feel it's safe or appropriate to speak, text. Absolutely. It's free text. You can type anything that you need to, anything that you want to. It rings into the same Intrado console. It's going to be processed and handled just like any other 911 call.
And then if someone doesn't have a cell phone handy or doesn't know how to text, let's say, there is also a safe way to call 911 and get help when you cannot speak in a certain situation.
Sure.
Go into the silent 911 call.
Luckily, actually, Facebook and social media kind of made this a little bit more prevalent. Somebody needs to call for help and needs to be as discreet as humanly possible, right? So we call them silent 911s. You're still absolutely reaching out for help. You've got a life-threatening emergency. We're going to do our absolute best to ask everything we need to ask of you in simple yes/no questions. 1 for yes, 2 for no, however it is that that operator happens to prompt the caller. Do you need police? Hit 1 for yes. Do you need fire? Hit 1 for yes. There is still a way to communicate. It's working with what you've got, depending on the situation and what our callers feel most comfortable and safe in participating in.
And then how does our communications center handle emergency calls for the hearing impaired?
Okay, so we've got a system called TTY, Telecommunications Teletype. Oh, I'm so sorry. I screwed the T is going the wrong place.
Let me see if I can.
Teletype technology.
That sounds good.
Okay. So this is a system that almost operates sort of like a silent 911 for somebody who is hearing impaired, who has some kind of cochlear implant or a device that helps them communicate, but they can't make phone contact. A lot of citizens lately have been going through a relay service. If a relay service is not available so they can get an interpreter, they go through TTY. Our phone will establish and recognize that connection and automatically launches into a sort of probing, checking to see if this is a TTY enabled device, so that we can then prompt the next question. Do you need police, fire, medical? What is the address of your emergency? So that our hearing impaired community can still get full access to all of our services in a system that's more streamlined and comparable with what they need.
I thank you so much, both of you, for being here, especially seeing one of the faces behind the voices.
Sure. Yeah, for the most part, we don't get seen. We will talk to people all day on a radio, on a phone, and you could walk right by any single dispatcher and never know who they were unless you have to call them.
And you do great work. Thank you so much, JD.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us today. Again, don't forget to send in any questions that you have or potential Did You Know ideas. Like us and hit that notification button to stay connected to the Sheriff's Office. We hope you have a wonderful afternoon and stay safe.